All right. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to our advisory group members, our participants, and guests. Please note that today's meeting is being recorded and will be posted and available online for later review. I'd like to officially welcome you to the December 2022 Equitable Policing Advisory Work Group meeting. I am Savitra Peoples Brown, and I serve as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Baltimore County, newly appointed. And today I am joined by several of my Baltimore County colleagues. The Administrative Officer, Stacey Rogers, will be joining us momentarily. Before we begin, there is a slight amendment to the current agenda. We were going to hear from Ms. Rebecca Young, who joined the county in July 2022 and serves as the Deputy County Administrative Officer for Public Safety. Unfortunately, she had a scheduling conflict and was unable to participate, but she sends her most warmest regards and will certainly be present at future meetings. So I would like to welcome and invite my county colleagues to introduce themselves. First, beginning with Colonel Joseph Conger, who is representing our newly appointed interim police chief, Dennis Depp, who also had a scheduling conflict this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you, hear you
All
just
right.
fine.
Awesome. Chief Delp, today is day one on the job for him. I'm sure you can imagine that he has a lot going on today and difficult to get to everything. I'm happy to fill in for him here and just convey the message from Chief Delp and from myself and the agency. Our core values are integrity, fairness, and service. We know that the Equitable Policing Work Group believes in the fairness standard, that we hold true to our values. And this is difficult, this is challenging work, but it's very important, right? We hold those values to be our guiding lights in what we do. And we appreciate the work that everyone's putting in to make sure we maintain that standard of fairness for Baltimore County. So thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Conger. Next, I would like to ask Ms. Nicole D'Amato, who is also with our police department, to introduce herself.
I'm Nicole D'Amato. I'm the Director of Crime Strategies and Analysis, and I'm here to support the work that you guys are doing and to make sure you have access to all of the data that you need in order to complete your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, Ms. Ramona Brown Carter, who's on our Human Relations team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ramona Brown Carter with the Baltimore County Human Relations Commission. We also serve under the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We are glad to serve and to be here in any capacity that will help us push this work and advance it further.
Thank you, Ramona. And we have one of our newest members, Miss Ashley Elliott, who is with us. Ashley, could you introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Elliott. I am the Title VI Coordinator in Training for the Human Relations Commission and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion staff.
Thank you. And I see that Miss Rogers is in the waiting room. All right. As mentioned, our County Administrative Officer, Stacey Rogers, has joined us. We were just doing introductions. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone, and I do apologize for the delay. I was definitely in a capital budget meeting. We are entering budget season, but I'm pleased that I can join you this evening and look forward to working with you and, of course, working with Ms. Peoples Brown and our Deputy County Administrative Officer, Ms. Rebecca Young, as we reignite our working relationship with you. That is a priority for the county the county executive, and clearly a priority for Rebecca and I and Savitra as we move forward. I'll turn it back to you, Savitra.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Next, I would like to, because it's been a while since we've been together, I would like to invite our advisory group members who has joined us, if they could be so kind as to introduce themselves. So I know that our State's Attorney, Mr. Schellenberger, is on the line with us. If you could be so kind.
Good evening, all. Scott Schellenberger, State's Attorney for Baltimore County. I come here with an open mind, willing to listen and learn, and particularly interested in all the data that is provided so we can get to the heart of some things and perhaps make some much needed changes.
Thank you, sir. And we also have Mr. Tony Fugit. Sir, if you could introduce yourself.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Tony Fugit, past president of Baltimore County NAACP, and currently serve as an executive committee member for the NAACP. Look forward to re-engaging with the committee and see what good work we could do going forward to improve the relationship with the police department and participate.
Thank you so much, sir. And there are other members who were just unable to join us this evening. This is a very busy time of the year. And so they too send their most warmest regards. As I mentioned, this meeting is being recorded, and we will also have meeting minutes available. So we'll be certain to capture their make sure that they have received the necessary information about what transpired in today's meeting. I also want to welcome our very special guests. We have Dr. Lauren Hamilton Edwards, who is the Associate Professor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Dr. Hamilton Edwards and her team are performing a data deep dive analysis of the police traffic data. I will turn it over. They have a brief presentation for us, and so I will turn it over to Dr. Hamilton Edwards for further introduction.
We have Dr. Ali too.
Yes, we have Dr. Ali as well.
And it looks like I need to provide permission, so this may take just a second. It's not going to let me share unless I shut down because of course.
If you email to our side, Savitra should be able to share.
Okay. We can
for-
actually do it without a presentation if that is okay with everyone.
Yeah, and we can always send around the visual aids post meeting.
Yep. Does that work for you, Usman? Oh, great. So our purpose tonight was just to give you a high level of what we're have been contracted to do for the Equitable Policing Advisory Group. And so we're both Usman and I are very committed to public service. We are also very committed to Baltimore County as residents. So we are excited to be part of this work. My work is typically around what strategies, innovations can the public sector use, most interested in local government, to improve how they work, and what explains what works and what doesn't work in a lot of cases. So one example of this is I've looked at community policing and strategies around community policing. And over my career and my time researching public innovation, one thing I found is that how programs are implemented are even more important than why or if a program is implemented. Community policing is a perfect example of this. So a lot of localities say they do community policing. when we say that, it can mean a lot of different things. And so to say that community policing has an impact, my second question is then what kind of community policing are we talking about? Because community policing means something different to everyone. So it is in the how we do our public management work that matters so much, getting into that black box. And so I think policing is a huge part of this, where we have very little understanding of how policing is done. So we make big sweeping conclusions on the outcomes of that policing without understanding what's done at the heart of it. Usman has an even more pointed interest in policing than I have over the years. So Usman, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. So my name is Mir Usman Ali, and I'm an assistant professor at the School of Public Policy at UMBC. And my overall interest is in how public managers and public organizations and public institutions, how they mediate social equity outcomes for citizens. And quite a lot of my research has been on policing. Specifically, I have looked at citizen oversight of police, its impact on racial disparities and law enforcement outcomes, its unintended consequences, as well as the factors associated with the adoption of police oversight boards. In addition, I have research on other areas of how public organizations and public employees bear on social equity outcomes. I've looked at the preparedness of local public health departments for the coronavirus pandemic and the effect that had on excess deaths at the county level in the US. I've also looked at how intimate partner violence was impacted in the early days of the pandemic when stay-at-home orders were issued. And that research is with Dr. Edwards. Um, I am looking forward to working on this project. And as a resident of Baltimore County, both Dr. Edwards and I are committed to doing the best work that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should have also mentioned, I do quite a bit of facilitation of strategic planning, training, and evaluation. So with nonprofit and local government. So this is great to extend it to where I live. We are also joining us, but not joining tonight, are two intrepid graduate assistants that are fantastic. Taylor West is mine. She was able to join one of our weekly check-in meetings, and she is a master's of public policy student. She likes to remind me all of the time how young she is, which she is 22, and it makes me feel ancient. But she is one of the smartest students I've worked with at UMBC, which is saying a lot. We work with a lot of smart students. And she is just so passionate about her work. She really, at the end of the day, wants to work for NASA. So fingers crossed. She's done internships with NOAA already, and will graduate this spring. And then Usman GA is also joining us. His name is Tangi, and I'll let Usman introduce him.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. My graduate assistant in this project will be a gentleman named Tanguy Ringoire, and he is originally from Belgium, and he's in our PhD program in the School of Public Policy. So in addition to being a budding expert on the policing literature, he is also a chess grandmaster, and we are very lucky to have him, and he is equally excited as us to work on this project.
Yeah, so if you do not know, UMBC has an excellent chess team. We've beaten Harvard multiple times for the national championship, so we're very proud of our nerdiness. So the main question and the task we've been given is is seemingly a simple question, but once you start looking deeper, it's actually quite complex to get at it. The question is that was posed to us is what explains the disparities, the racial disparities that we see in the traffic stop data in Baltimore County? So you all convened in 2019, and because of a wide disparity, particularly for Black men. And so what we've been tasked with is looking at that disparity, looking at the updated data to see if that disparity has continued, and then looking at different types of explanations that are different potential explanations for why that disparity might have changed over time, or if it has sustained, why has it sustained? So Usman's going to talk about the three phases that we look at our work, and I may jump in some because he doesn't have the benefit of seeing the slides as I do. So go ahead, Usman.
Thank you very much. So in the phase one of our project, which is already done, or towards its completion, I should say, we have reviewed the literature on traffic stops, and that includes the scholarly literature that's published in peer-reviewed journals, as well as studies done by think tanks, private research groups all over the United States. And we have reviewed around 150 studies. Like about half of them were from the peer-reviewed literature, and the remainder were um, from the think tanks and private research groups. So and we are towards the end of forming some conclusions based on this literature review that we have done, and we have received the data for our for this study today, and hopefully we are going to be starting right away, most likely tomorrow, in analyzing that data, setting it up, and examining the various explanations as to what are the factors that lead to this disparity that has been documented. So I'll share a little bit about the kinds of explanations that can be explored with the data that we have. So one explanation that we are going to be looking at is doing a spatial analysis of racial disparities in Baltimore County vis-a-vis traffic stops. So we are going to be doing looking in which areas there are relatively greater disparities. We are going to be creating a heat map and trying to see whether there are particular areas in which these disparities tend to exist. We are also going to be using a best practice in a research design. Now, this method is called, this is another method, it's called the veil of darkness method. So what has been done in the previous research is that scholars have looked at traffic stop patterns uh, in the time when our clocks shift due to daylight savings time. So they look at the window around twilight time, and they look at look at police stop patterns throughout the year in that twilight period, 2 or 3 hour period, and they look at that, and they look at whether uh, variations in visibility lead to disparities in the kinds of traffic stops that are conducted. So we are going to be using this method with the data that we have available. And the final approach that we are going to be using to explore inequities or equities is to see if there are any patterns associated with the changes in the traffic stop policies that have occurred over the years. So it's possible that there have been improvements due to improvements in the policies in traffic stops, and we would very much like to highlight them if there have been these kinds of improvements. And we are going to be, so that is phase two. And finally, in phase 3, we are going to be sharing some of our work with you for feedback. So in January next year, or is that February, we are going to be sharing the interim
Changed
report.
it today, February 17th.
It just changed today. So we're going to be doing sharing interim report with the county executive, presenting our findings to him, and we'll get feedback. And then after a month, in I believe around March 20th or March 17th, I think that was the date that we also set today, because we got the data today. So we are going to be sharing our final report, and we are going to be presenting our findings to the advisory group as well as the county executive and all stakeholders. So these were the 3 phases of our study. Thank you.
We look forward to the feedback that you all can give as a group as well. So I hope that when that time comes, we can even share the interim report with you so that we're incorporating any feedback that you have, ideas you have about analyses before we do that final report. So right now, we're happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Thank you both for the overview. And again, colleagues from the work group, we will send the slides because I think it gives context when you can see. I'm a visual learner, so I think it gives context when you have the slides. So we'll send those along. But it is the desire of the work to have the work group inform the work. Just to illuminate a little bit more, the county executive wanted to understand more the root cause of some of the data, and that's why he said, "Well, let's take a deeper dive with respect to the traffic stop data." But as a group, you know, your role expanded. So we also have to look at the context of the the work groups and your recommendations. So we look forward to our UMBC colleagues providing the preliminary, the interim report for you to review and get feedback, and then we will take the preliminary report with your feedback to the county executive. So that is the intent, that the work group members would have some input and weigh in before the interim report goes to the county executive.
A question: when you say data, what are we talking about? When we're talking data, over what period of time? Is it countywide? Is it, you know, what did you receive today when you received the data?
So we have traffic stop data now for Baltimore County, I believe, since 2017. And so it's the data that would go to the state. So you can see the aggregate data on the state website about traffic stops. But we have the disaggregated data. So that has, oh, go ahead. I thought somebody was adding to that. So we have information about who was stopped, their race, age, and gender. We also have information, geolocation data, so that we can place where that stop happened. We have why the stop was made and the result. So it's not, we know whether that person got arrested, whether they got off with a warning, or whether they were given a citation. So it's limited data because it's what's gathered at the state, but I think it gives us a chance to take what the advisory group saw in 2019 and really dig deeper with some of with different analyses, looking at a longer time span, and thinking about it maybe a little differently.
So that's my question. I remember when the original data came out. What year did that end? And what is our new cutoff? How much more time period have you all added to the data?
I may not be the best person to answer this. I don't know how far it went back, but the last, oh, go ahead, Nicole.
I'm not sure where the original study ended, but we provided January of 2017 through October of 2022.
Okay, so we have also collected data since that initial report was made public, which was concerning, and therefore we have continued to collect data up till October. And is that going to be our cutoff? Okay.
That was the question. Okay, good enough. I got
Hey,
you.
Tony, I always like to help you, Tony.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's an additional about 2.5 years essentially, so that, and that's why we want to first do almost essentially exactly what was done in 2019, so we can see if there's been any changes. And if there have been, then maybe it's a good story and we can figure out if the police department has done anything in policy and procedure changes to see if that explains or at least gets to an explanation of the change. If it stayed the same though, then we will be doing different types of analyses.
Okay, any other questions? And so, as was mentioned, we will seek to receive from the advisory members what your perspective, through your lens, your respective roles, what you hope to come out of this analysis. This is a pivotal point. We're very anxious to get the results, and so you will notice that this is a really quick turnaround of a deep dive analysis that our vendor, Dr. Hamilton Edwards and Dr. Ali, will be presenting for us.
Well, to that end, what is the timeline for having the information together and the findings?
So the final report is March 17th.
But the interim report is where you will have an opportunity to review, will be before that. And Dr. Edwards, what did you say the new date as of today, since you all just got the data?
So it'll be February 17th for that interim.
Right.
With the hope, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So after February 17th, we should be able to look at you all will have an opportunity to look at the data, have discussions about the interim report and ask questions or give feedback before that document goes to the county executive.
Okay, thank you.
And just also to add to that note, we do expect to have monthly meetings. So we will have an opportunity, well, you'll have an opportunity, I should say, not only to receive and review the data separately, but to actually, well, the results, the interim report, but for us to have a discussion, an open discussion regarding it as well.
And I can't recall, but in the data, is there a box for reason for the stop? Okay, so you're shaking your head, yes. So if it's a tail light or a tag or a speeding, then that is recorded in this data.
Yeah, so the reason of the stop is so it could be equipment violation or a moving violation or reckless driving or whatever, but it doesn't give the degree or the severity of the offense.
It just gives you a category.
Right.
Okay.
It follows the Maryland code.
Got it.
Oh, yep.
All right, were there any other questions? I see that one of our colleagues, Ms. Francis, is an attendee, but I'm unable to make her a panelist. So Crystal, I'm actually going to unmute you, and if you have anything that you would like to contribute, we will be able to hear you. So you're unmuted.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, sorry, the password didn't work for me, so that's how I ended up in the attendee. No, yeah, so I'm just joining late, but thank you for that. The one question I have is in regards to the meeting dates and times. They're going to be monthly. Do you know the time? Are they going to always be 6 to 8 evening? Are we going to have a recurring standing meeting like last time, or is it just going to be ad hoc?
So I'm going to send out a scheduling poll to identify the date and time that works best for everyone. For the re-engagement session, we were very eager, which is why we scheduled it on the date and time frame. But moving forward, we will have better consensus on everyone's availability.
Thank you.
All right. If there are not any additional questions, I know we don't quite have a forum, but again, this is a very busy time of the year, so I learned, and so our other colleagues unfortunately weren't able to participate. But more to come. This is only the beginning.
Okay. Do you have an updated list of the members of the work group?
That has been confirmed. I do not.
Okay.
I have the existing list that is currently on our county website, but I'm in the process of going through to determine who is still active, who needs to be switched out, etc.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all very, very much. I'm greatly appreciative of your time. I now have the presentation, so I will send that out, post meeting, I will send that out immediately. And then we will just need a few days to prepare the meeting minutes and to upload the recording onto our webpage. And then, of course, if you have any questions, you can certainly email myself. I'll also include Dr. Hamilton Edwards' contact information. I believe you already have it, but I'll resend it so that if you have any feedback that you would like to provide, you can do so.
Savitra, I have one question. In addition to the data deep dive, can you share with the work group members in terms of our reconvening some of the other things that we are proposing in terms of working on to further define the work groups? Because there are other topics that evolved as the group evolved. We're trying to really identify and confirm the charge of the group.
Right, and I agree. So that is something that we're going to be looking at. But today, as far as preparing for today's conversation, we just really wanted to focus on the
Right. I'm
data
just
deep
sharing
dive.
what else is in the works.
Right.
This is in the works. It is in addition to this data deep dive part, we had discussed for quite some time now, having a convening to really look at the charge of the group and other the broader context of what the county executive requested that the group consider. Savitra and the team, and of course, Deputy CAO Rebecca Young will talk to you about that. One of the activities is an actual convening of the group, a facilitated convening, so you all can talk about it from the standpoint of what is the broader work of the group and the agenda. That's the other major piece that as the group reconvenes that the team is working on.
I would assume, and correct me somebody if I'm wrong, that based upon the review of the data, that we as a advisory group may be making recommendations to the police department concerning training. Is that ultimately where folks get to with these kind of studies?
That's a part of it,
Okay.
but the recommendations will go back to the county executive since the county executive requested this convening. So we would take the recommendations, as with most work groups, we'll go back to the county executive and then through uh, in terms of concurrence on the recommendations, then to the implementation phase under the auspices of the Deputy County Administrative Officer, Rebecca Young, that will work with the department on if there's any policies or procedural SOPs, training, whatever comes out of the deep dive and you all's discussions, Mr. Schillenberger. That's typically how the process goes forward.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that we should skip Johnny, but I know eventually we're going to get down to the police department, and that's what I wanted to make sure. If the numbers stay the way they were, that was our ultimate kind of outcome, is to try and make some recommendations on changes.
Right.
And to add to that,
I was just explaining for the benefit of the entire group that the county executive was the requester and the county executive is the recipient of the deliverable.
and I would just add, was for me was so exciting, if you will, is that the results of the data or the final report will also inform the future direction of the advisory group as a whole. So, while it's great for us to benchmark and to identify what our future direction will consist of, I'm really anxious to see what an environment with the scope of the results will bring forth, because that too will definitely inform not so much recommendations for county practices, but even future focus for the advisory group.
If I can add, it's one reason we did such an extensive literature review is because we want to understand, how others are looking at traffic stop data and using traffic stop data. What type of analyses are they doing? But also what's coming out of that? What are their findings? Particularly when it comes to NIJ, the National Institutes of Justice studies, RGAO studies, what are think tanks talking about, getting that full realm of possibilities so that we understand and can add that to the report to help y'all on y'all's next leg of the journey.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you all. It was very nice to meet you, first and foremost. Thank you again for your time. We will be sending out a poll to identify your availability for reoccurring meetings, particularly in the month of January, February, and subsequent. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If there are any other immediate comments or feedback that would like to be brought forth, I would like to formally adjourn. All right. Happy holidays.
Thank you.